So, this is my mom. She's a 53-year-old CVICU nurse. And I have 4 questions from the perspective as a provider and as a patient, with some follow-up questions too.
Okay.
So first question is, how long have you been a nurse for, Mom?
I've been a nurse since 1991.
Okay, so that's over 30 years now
Yes.
as a nurse. And why are you still a nurse after all this time?
It's my career.
Is it a career that fulfills you, or is it just for money?
Both.
I know you work night shifts. How frequently do you interact with your patients during the night?
Most of the night. All night.
You check them how often?
Whenever at CVIC, we never leave the bedside. If we leave to have a lunch or go to the bathroom, somebody has to watch the patient.
And most of the time, your patients are unconscious, or does it
No, they
depend on
come.
the patient?
It depends on the patient. They come from the OR post anesthesia. We recover them from anesthesia, and in the morning, we get them up to the chair because they're extubated within 6 hours or so.
I'm asking because I want to know about how important bedside manner is for you. I know if they're asleep, you can't really speak with them, but
Even when they're sleeping, you still have to have good bedside manners because hearing is the last thing that goes away, right?
So
And the first thing to come back. So, and even if they're sleeping under anesthesia, you don't know if they're awake or not.
in my paper,
Because they could be aware even though they seem to be sleeping.
in my paper, I'm writing, focusing on how healthcare professionals and providers can build empathy to better understand their patient. So,
And regardless, you have to have good manners, whether they're asleep or awake, right? Patient, family, co-workers, everybody.
how do you, what's your preferred way to learn about a patient's medical condition? I mean, there are things like books or videos or trainings.
Preferred way to learn about my patient?
Yes.
Well, before I get a report, I have to look up patient's information and everything.
Specifically about their condition, like for example, if they're a heart failure patient, you know a lot about them because you've seen them over the years, but how did you learn about the condition itself from?
Well, I've been doing it for so many years, right? By now, I'm an expert at what I do.
So from personal experience seeing patients,
Yes. But every once in a while, we still do have, we have in-service. We have...
What is in-service?
When a rep comes or a new equipment comes, they come and teach us how to use it and all that stuff. And we have mandatories that we have to...
The trainings.
Self-study, right? And the training.
The ALN network.
If there's something new, we always have education first before you use anything.
So that's learning from a different source. Because I want to know, do you find value in learning from the patient themselves? Talking to the patient, getting to know how they're feeling with their condition?
Oh, that's mandatory. You have to talk to your patient. How are you going to know what they're feeling if you're not going to...
You don't engage with them.
Right. You don't just fix numbers. Yeah, we have monitors, we have numbers and all that stuff, but you're not supposed to treat the numbers. You treat the patient.
Okay. Do you know what empathy is? Could you define it? So how do you build empathy with a patient? You personally.
For me to empathize with my patient?
To understand the patient better. How do
you just try to put your feet in their own shoes, right? Or how do you call that?
Put themselves...
Put myself in their shoes.
Okay. And then the next few questions are from the perspective as a patient.
Because as a nurse, no matter how long you've been a nurse, you should never lose your empathy and sympathy, right? Not only to your patient, but the family too.
Because I know we've been in every position. We've been patients, we've been providers, we've been the family of patients, so we've seen every side.
And you always treat everybody as a human being, regardless if they're the provider or the patient or family.
And then the next few questions are from the perspective as a patient. How important is it for you to build the connection with your provider?
Well, it's very important because they cannot guess, right? You have to communicate, you have to say what you're feeling, what you need, and all that stuff.
And when you see a provider, what do you expect from them exactly, in your own words?
What do I expect from them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I expect them to have a good assessment of me and not just treat without fully knowing what needs to be done.
Okay.
They need to spend time. These days, providers only stay very short. They don't even communicate to the patient properly anymore.
I know in the ER it's very quick there, but
Yeah.
even in CVICU, doctors are
Yes.
still like that.
Mhm. That's why it's very important for the nurses to be the patient advocate.
Because doctors can't spend the time that patients
Yes.
need to understand everything going on.
Like in CVICU, it's really the nurses who's treating the patient. Our doctors are not really there. They depend on us. It's the nurses who does the assessment. They depend on our assessment, so you have to be a very good assessor.
Okay. And then when you see a provider, be it a doctor or anybody else, do you expect them to empathize with you? Or is that just a bonus if they're able to empathize with you?
Everybody, every provider, everyone who works in healthcare should be able to empathize, period,
Should be able to.
regardless.
So why is that?
Because you shouldn't lose the aspect of being human. We're not gods.
Okay. That was
So
everything.
you treat the whole person.
And that's everything. Thank you.